The warning alarms should have been screaming. People should have been running in the streets. Ships should have been launching from every port on Earth. But none of that happened when the largest alien fleet in galactic history appeared at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of Orbital Station Harmony, watching the massive ships drop out of hyperspace. 3,000 vessels, each one the size of a city. Their hulls gleamed silver and black, covered in weapons that could turn planets into dust. The formation was perfect, disciplined, terrifying. "Sir," Commander Park So-min called from her station. "We're receiving a transmission." "Put it through," Tae-ho said calmly, adjusting his uniform. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. "Primitive species of Sol 3. This is Fleet Commander Vexitar of the Galactic Dominion. You will submit to our authority immediately. Prepare for occupation and integration into the Dominion. Resistance will be met with total destruction." Park So-min looked at her admiral, waiting for orders to activate Earth's defense systems. Instead, Tae-ho smiled. It was a small, quiet smile, like someone had just told him good news. "Open a channel to Earth," he said. "Channel open, sir." "President Lee, they're here. Should we proceed with Protocol 7? Down on Earth's surface, President Lee Da-eun sat in her office in Seoul, looking out at the peaceful city below. People walked to work, children played in parks, and life continued as normal. She had been waiting for this call for months. "Give them the standard greeting, Admiral," she replied. Tae-ho nodded and opened a channel to the alien fleet. "Fleet Commander Vextar, this is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of Earth Defense Command. Welcome to the Sol system. Please maintain your current position while we prepare proper reception for your arrival." On the Dominion flagship, Vexitar stared at his communication officer. In 200 years of conquest, no species had ever welcomed them. They had faced desperate attacks, pathetic surrender attempts, and terrified silence, but never politeness. "Did they understand our message?" Vexitar asked. "Translator confirms perfect understanding, Commander," replied the officer. "They seem to be inviting us to wait." Vexitar had conquered 46 worlds. He knew every possible response to Dominion arrival. Fear, anger, desperation, hopelessness. This was something new. "Sir," called Intelligence Officer Zethkol from across the bridge. "Our scans show no military buildup on the planet. No weapons charging, no ships launching. Their defense platforms are active, but not targeting us." "What are they doing?" Vexitar demanded. "According to intercepted communications, they appear to be celebrating." Back on Orbital Station Harmony, Commander Park So-min monitored the alien fleet while Admiral Tae-ho made calls to various Earth departments. She listened to fragments of conversations from across the planet. "Finally," came one voice from the Mars colony. "About time they showed up," said another from a mining station near Jupiter. "I wonder if they brought the same ships as last time," commented someone from the Luna base. Park So-min had served in Earth defense for 15 years, but she had never heard anyone talk about aliens like they were old friends. She checked her communications again to make sure she was hearing correctly. "Admiral," she said carefully, "the civilians seem very excited about the alien arrival." "They should be," Tae-ho replied, finishing another call. "This is what we've been waiting for." "Sir, I don't understand." Tae-ho looked at her with the same calm smile. "So-min, how long have you been in Defense Command?" 15 years, sir. "And in all that time, have you ever wondered why Earth maintains the largest intelligence network in the galaxy, but almost no military fleet?" Park So-min had wondered about that. Earth had thousands of spy satellites, monitoring stations, and observation posts scattered across dozens of star systems. But their actual military was surprisingly small for a spacefaring civilization. "I assumed it was a defensive strategy, sir." "In a way, it was. But not the kind of defense you're thinking of." On Earth, Dr. Choi Min-seok continued his work at the Xenological Institute as if nothing had happened. His assistants kept asking if they should evacuate or hide their research. Each time, he simply told them to keep working. Dr. Choi asked his student researcher Kim Yoo-jin, "Shouldn't we be worried about the aliens?" "Why would we be worried?" Dr. Choi replied, updating a file labeled Dominion Fleet Patterns, Analysis Just 47. "We've been studying them for 200 years. Kim Yoo-jin looked confused. But sir, first contact was only established today. Official first contact, yes. But we've been watching them since they first left their home system. Dr. Choi pulled up a star map showing the Dominion's expansion over 2 centuries. Every world they conquered, every battle they fought, every strategy they used. We have it all documented. How is that possible? Because we followed them. Meanwhile, on Mars colony, Captain Yoon Hai-jin received dozens of messages from other colonies asking if Mars Defense Command was preparing for invasion. His response was always the same: continue normal operations. The mining ships near Jupiter kept working. The research stations around Saturn maintained their schedules. The deep space monitors beyond Pluto kept recording everything the alien fleet did, just as they had recorded everything for the past 200 years. Engineer Kang Yuri was terraform working on Mars when her crew asked about the aliens. Should we stop the atmosphere processors? One worker asked. Why would we stop? Yuri replied. This is the best day in Earth history. The best day? We're being invaded. We're not being invaded. We're finally meeting our teachers. Back on. The Dominion flagship, Fleet Commander Vex Tar, was receiving reports that made no sense. His tactical officers had expected immediate surrender or desperate resistance. Instead, the humans seemed to be going about their normal lives. Sir, reported scanner operator Thekmar, human communications traffic has increased by 300%, but it's not military coordination. They appear to be sharing historical data. What kind of historical data? Records of our previous conquest operations, sir. Vexstar felt something cold move through his chest. Explain. They have detailed files on our conquest of the Centauri system 40 years ago. Ship movements, battle plans, casualty reports, information that was classified at the highest levels. That's impossible. We've never encountered this species before. Sir, called another officer. They're broadcasting something to us. The message came from Earth's surface, from Professor Han Dong-woo at Seoul University. His voice was calm and friendly, like he was giving a lecture to students. Greetings, Fleet Commander Vex Tar. I'm uploading my latest research paper to your ship's computers. It's titled Comparative Analysis of 47 Galactic Conquest Patterns, A Historical Perspective. I think you'll find it interesting reading. Vex Tar stared at the data transfer notification. 47 conquest patterns. But the Dominion had only conquered 46 systems. He opened the file and began reading. The first line made his blood freeze. This analysis covers the Galactic Dominion's conquest operations from their first expansion 200 years ago through their current arrival at Sol 3, designated as Conquest Operation Number 47. The file contained everything, every ship class, every weapon type, every tactical formation the Dominion had ever used. Fleet movements that had been secret were mapped down to individual vessel positions. Battle strategies that had never been shared outside the highest command were explained in perfect detail. How do they know all this? Vextar whispered. His communications officer looked up with wide eyes. Sir, we're receiving similar transmissions from across the galaxy. The humans appear to have observation posts in every system we've ever conquered. Admiral Tejo watched the alien fleet from his station, noting how their perfect formation had begun to shift slightly. Small signs of confusion and uncertainty were appearing in their movements. Sir, Commander Park So-min said, the alien fleet is requesting another communication. Put them through. Vextar's voice had lost some of its cold confidence. Human Admiral, explain how you possess classified Dominion intelligence. Tejo's smile grew wider. Fleet Commander, we've been watching you for a very long time. Every conquest, every battle, every decision, you've been excellent teachers. Teachers of what? Of how not to rule a galaxy. The admission hung in space. Between the two fleets, 3,000 Dominion ships, the most powerful military force in galactic history, faced a single orbital station and realized they were not the hunters they thought they were. They were the ones being studied. Fleet Commander Vextar expected many things when he arrived at Sol 3. He expected fear, panic, desperate military preparations, or immediate surrender. What he did not expect was for the humans to throw a party. Sir, Intelligence Officer Zethkol reported, his voice filled with confusion. The humans are celebrating, across the entire planet. Vextar looked at the tactical display showing Earth. Instead of the usual signs of a world preparing for conquest, evacuating cities, hiding resources, mobilizing defenses, he saw something unprecedented. Cities were lighting up with celebration. Displays. Ships were launching not to flee, but to get better views of the Dominion fleet. Celebrating what? Vexitar demanded. According to intercepted communications, they're celebrating our arrival, sir. On Earth, the news networks were broadcasting live coverage with excitement that usually reserved for major holidays. Reporter Shin Min Ho stood outside the Seoul Space Center, where crowds had gathered to watch the sky. This is the moment humanity has been waiting for, he announced to cameras. After 2 centuries of preparation, first official contact with the Galactic Dominion has finally arrived. 2 centuries of preparation. Those words made Vextar's mandibles click nervously. In homes across Earth, families gathered around screens showing the alien fleet. Children pointed excitedly at the massive ships, while their parents smiled with satisfaction. "Mom?" asked 8-year-old Park Ji-woo. "Are those the bad aliens you told me about?" "Not bad, sweetheart," replied his mother, Dr. Lee Soo-jin, who worked at the Global Research Institute. "Just misguided. And we're going to help them understand better." Across the solar system, human activities continued as if the arrival of a conquest fleet was perfectly normal. On the mining station near Jupiter, Captain Yoon Hae-jin was actually increasing production quotas. "Sir," asked his second officer, "shouldn't we be worried about the aliens?" "Why?" Yoon replied, checking cargo manifests. "We've been preparing for this day. For 200 years. Everything is going exactly according to plan." "What plan?" "The plan to meet our greatest teachers." These conversations were being intercepted by Dominion listening posts, and each report made Vextar more uncomfortable. In 2 centuries of conquest, no species had ever referred to the Dominion as teachers. They had been called monsters, destroyers, tyrants, but never teachers. "Sir," Zeth Cole continued, "we're detecting unusual communication patterns. The humans appear to be sharing large amounts of historical data with each other." "What kind of historical data?" "Our historical data, sir. On Earth, Professor Han Dong-woo was conducting an emergency lecture at Seoul University. The auditorium was packed with students, researchers, and military personnel, all eager to hear the latest analysis. "As you can see from these recordings," Han said, displaying holographic images of Dominion ships, "this is formation pattern Delta 7, first used in the conquest of the Centauri Collective 38 years ago. Notice the positioning of heavy cruisers in the outer ring." A student raised her hand. "Professor, how do we have recordings of battles that happened decades ago in other star systems?" Han smiled the same calm smile that seemed to be spreading across all of humanity. "Because we were there, Student Nam, watching, learning, recording everything." The student looked confused. "But we didn't have faster-than-light travel 38 years ago. Officially, human civilization achieved FTL travel 25 years ago. Unofficially, we've had it for over 2 centuries. We just kept it secret while we followed our teachers around the galaxy. Similar lectures were happening across Earth, on Mars, on Luna, and on dozens of human stations scattered throughout the solar system. Each one shared the same shocking revelation. Humanity had been secretly following the Dominion for 200 years. Analyst Oh Soo-jin presented her findings to the UN Security Council in an emergency session. "Pattern recognition confirms this. Is the same fleet composition used against 46 previous conquests. Ship-to-ship formation distances are identical to previous operations. Command ship positioning follows established Dominion doctrine." General Bae In-ho nodded approvingly. "Same tactics, same weaknesses. They really don't adapt much, do they?" "No, sir. That's what makes them such excellent negative examples." "Negative examples? Everything they do shows us exactly what not to do when interacting with other civilizations. They're perfect teachers in how to fail at galactic leadership. These conversations were being transmitted openly, without encryption, across human communication networks. The Dominion was intercepting every word, and each revelation was more disturbing than the last. On the Dominion flagship, Science Officer Corthan was analyzing human data networks with growing alarm. "Commander, they have detailed records of our military operations going back 200 years. ship specifications, battle tactics, classified formation strategies, internal communications protocols. How detailed? Vexitar asked. They know the name of your predecessor's predecessor, sir. They have recordings of private command meetings from battles fought before you were born. Vexitar felt something like ice forming in his stomach. Show me. Corthan displayed a human database entry. It contained complete tactical analysis of the Dominion's conquest of Kepler 442b, including video recordings of the battle, audio of command communications, and detailed breakdowns of every tactical. Decision made. We conducted that operation under total communications blackout, Vextar whispered. No signals in or out. How do they have audio recordings of our bridge communications? According to their data, sir, they had a monitoring station hidden in the asteroid field. They've been doing this for every operation. Every operation? All 46 conquests, sir. They have complete records of everything. On Earth, communications specialist Nam Ji Woo was uploading humanity's response to the Galactic Communication Network. Her message was simple and direct. Conquest attempt Daburdura 47. Species 2847, Homo sapiens. Sol system. Broadcasting on all frequencies for galactic observation. All previously conquered species are welcome to monitor this interaction. The message reached 46 star systems simultaneously. On worlds that had been under Dominion rule for decades, suppressed populations looked up at their screens in amazement. Someone was talking back to the Dominion. Someone was treating them like they were just another predictable threat. On the former Centauri homeworld, Resistance leader Cathaval received the human transmission with disbelief. They're broadcasting our oppressor's arrival like it's entertainment? His aide nodded. The humans appear to have detailed intelligence on Dominion operations going back centuries. They're sharing it with everyone. Who are these humans? According to their data, they're species that spent 200 years following the Dominion around, learning their weaknesses. Back in the Sol system, engineer Kong Yu Ri was still working on Mars terraforming when her supervisor called an all-hands meeting. People, announced Director Kim Hyo-jin, today marks the end of the observation phase. The Dominion has finally come to us, which means we can begin the next phase of human galactic policy. What's the next phase? Asked a worker. Teaching. Them what we learned by watching them fail for 2 centuries. Similar meetings were happening across human space. Military commanders, scientists, engineers, and civilians all receiving the same message. The waiting was over. The real work could finally begin. On the Dominion flagship, reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. Human observation posts were emerging from hiding everywhere. Stations that had been invisible for decades were suddenly broadcasting detailed intelligence about Dominion operations to every species in the galaxy. Sir, reported Communications Officer Drexthor, we're detecting coordinated communication bursts from 47 star systems. The humans appear to have hidden monitoring stations in every system we've ever conquered. 47 systems, Vextar repeated, but we've only conquered 46. The 47th is Sol, sir. They're counting this system. The implications hit Vextar like a meteor strike. The humans hadn't just been watching the Dominion's past conquests. They had been preparing for their own conquest. For 200 years, they had studied every Dominion tactic, strategy, and weakness, all in preparation for this moment. Sir, Corthan called out urgently, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Several conquered worlds are showing signs of unrest. They appear to be organizing using the tactical intelligence the humans are broadcasting. Vextar stared at the tactical display showing his perfect fleet formation. For the first time in his military career, he felt like he was the one being hunted instead of the hunter. The humans had turned his greatest strength, the Dominion's successful conquest record, into his greatest weakness. Every victory had been observed, analyzed, and turned into a lesson plan for defeating them, and now class was about to begin. The truth was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, and Fleet Commander Vexitar could only watch as his perfect conquest began falling apart before it even started. On Earth, analyst Oh Soo-jin stood before a room full of military strategists, displaying holographic recreations of 46 different Dominion conquests. Each battle played out in perfect detail, showing ship movements, weapon deployments, and tactical decisions. As you can see, she explained, pointing to the display, the Dominion uses the same basic pattern for every conquest. Initial intimidation phase, demand for surrender, followed by orbital bombardment of military targets if resistance is detected. General Bei In-ho studied the patterns. They're very consistent. Dangerously consistent. They haven't adapted their tactics in 200 years because they haven't needed to. Every species they encountered was seeing these tactics for the first time. But we're not. Exactly. We've seen this exact same conquest attempt 46 times. We know what comes next better than they do. These strategy meetings were happening openly, with full recordings being broadcast to the galaxy. On conquered worlds across the Dominion, resistance leaders watched in amazement as humans calmly dissected the military machine that had crushed their civilizations. Aboard the Dominion flagship, Science Officer Corthan was making discoveries that shattered everything Vextar thought he knew about galactic intelligence gathering. "Sir," Corthan reported, his voice tight with disbelief, "the humans have video recordings of our conquest of Kepler 442b, high-definition recordings from multiple angles." "That's impossible. We maintained communication silence during that entire operation." "Sir, they weren't communicating. They were just watching. According to their files, they had hidden observation platforms throughout the system." Vextar reviewed the human recordings. They showed Dominion ships in perfect detail, recorded conversations between commanders, and complete tactical analysis of every decision made during the conquest. "How long have they been doing this?" "According to their archives, sir, they've been following us for exactly 203 years, 4 months, and 12 days. They have documentation of every conquest, every battle, every strategic meeting we've conducted since our expansion began." "Every meeting?" Corthan's mandibles clicked nervously. "Including this conversation, sir. They're currently recording everything we say and do." On Earth, Dr. Song Ye-jin was updating humanity's comprehensive database of Dominion operations. Her team of analysts had spent decades cataloging every detail of alien military doctrine. "Pattern analysis complete," she announced to her staff. "Predicted Dominion response to our non-compliance will be orbital demonstration bombardment of an unpopulated area, followed by a 72-hour ultimatum for surrender." Her assistant, researcher Park Chan-woo, looked confused. "How can you be so specific?" "Because they've done exactly the same thing 46 times before. Watch." She pulled up recordings from 6 different conquests, showing Dominion fleets responding to resistance with identical tactics. Same targeting patterns, same ultimatum timing, same threat escalation. They never change. Why would they? It's always worked before. They've never encountered a species that had already seen their playbook. These predictions were being broadcast openly across human networks, and the Dominion was intercepting every transmission. Vextar found himself in the unprecedented position of having his next moves predicted by his intended victims. "Sir," Intelligence Officer Zethkol reported, "the humans are broadcasting detailed predictions of our response protocols. They appear to know our standard operating procedures better than our own tactical officers." "Show me." The display showed a human analysis document titled Dominion Response Patterns, Operation 47 Predictions. It outlined exactly what the Dominion fleet would do next, including specific timing, target selection, and communication protocols. "This is classified tactical doctrine," Vextar growled. "How do they know our response patterns?" "Because we've used them 46 times, sir. They've been watching and learning." Meanwhile, on Mars Colony, Captain Yoon Hae-jin was conducting what appeared to be a routine training exercise. His mining ships were practicing emergency evacuation procedures, moving cargo between facilities, and testing communication systems. "Sir?" asked his operations officer. "Is this really the time for training exercises? We have an alien conquest fleet in the system." "This is exactly the time," Yoon replied. "We've been preparing for this specific scenario for 200 years. Every procedure we're testing was designed based on detailed analysis of how the Dominion conducts conquest operations." "You mean we planned for this invasion?" "We planned for this exact invasion. Same fleet composition, same tactics, same commander. We know what they're going to do before they do it." Similar exercises were occurring across human space. On Luna, base evacuation drills moved civilians not away from the aliens, but into predetermined safe zones calculated to be outside predicted bombardment areas. On orbital stations, defensive systems activated not to fight the Dominion, but to protect against their standard intimidation tactics. Every human action was based on detailed analysis of previous Dominion conquests. Nothing was random. Everything had been planned, tested, and optimized based on 2 centuries of careful observation. Communications specialist Nam Ji Woo was monitoring galactic communications when she detected something unexpected. Messages were being transmitted between previously conquered worlds using the tactical intelligence humanity was broadcasting. "Director," she called to Intelligence Chief Moon Jae-sung, "we're detecting coordination signals from conquered territories. They're using our Dominion tactical analysis to organize resistance movements." Moon smiled. That was always part of the plan. Share the intelligence, help them understand their oppressors' weaknesses, let them decide what to do with that information. "Sir, some of these worlds have been under Dominion control for over a century. They're using our data to plan uprisings." "Good. It's about time." On the former Rigel homeworld, Resistance leader Yethkol stared at the human intelligence files with growing excitement. For 70 years, his people had fought a hopeless guerrilla war against Dominion occupation. They had never understood how to predict Dominion troop movements or anticipate their tactical responses. Now they had detailed analysis of exactly how Dominion forces reacted to different types of resistance. Supply line vulnerabilities, command, structure weaknesses, response timing patterns, everything they needed to turn their desperate rebellion into an effective liberation campaign. "Send word to all resistance cells," Yethkol ordered. "The humans have given us the keys to our freedom." Similar scenes were playing out across 46 worlds. Suppressed populations who had suffered under Dominion rule for decades suddenly had access to detailed intelligence about their oppressors' military weaknesses. The information was spreading faster than the Dominion could stop it. Back aboard the flagship, Vextar received increasingly desperate reports from across his empire. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Drexthor, "we're detecting coordinated uprising attempts on 17 worlds. They all appear to be using identical tactical intelligence, the human intelligence." "Yes, sir. They know exactly when and where to strike to cause maximum disruption while avoiding our response forces." "How is that possible?" "Because the humans documented every counterinsurgency operation we've ever conducted, sir. They know our anti-rebellion protocols better than we do." Vextar stared at his tactical displays showing the galaxy. Red indicators were appearing across his empire as world after world erupted in coordinated rebellion. Each uprising was precisely timed and perfectly executed based on human analysis of Dominion weaknesses. "Sir," Corthan called urgently, "the humans are broadcasting something new." The transmission came from Director Kim Hyo-jin of Earth's Galactic Observation Network. Her voice was calm and professional, like she was giving a routine status report. "To all species currently under Dominion occupation, Earth's intelligence archives are now fully accessible on all galactic networks. You will find detailed analysis of Dominion military capabilities, response patterns, and tactical weaknesses based on 200 years of careful observation. Use this information as you see fit." The transmission ended, but its implications spread across the galaxy. 46 worlds suddenly had access to the most comprehensive intelligence database ever compiled about their oppressors. Vextar realized his conquest fleet had arrived not to conquer a single world, but to discover that their intended victims had spent 2 centuries preparing to liberate his entire empire. The students were about to become the teachers, and the first lesson was about to begin. Captain Shinwoo Jin had been sitting in an asteroid near the Vega system for 12 years, and he was finally ready to come out of hiding. "Activate all systems," he ordered his small crew aboard the hidden observation station. "It's time to introduce ourselves." What the Dominion had thought was just another space rock suddenly came alive with sophisticated monitoring equipment. Scanners emerged from camouflaged hatches, communication arrays unfolded from hidden compartments, and recording devices that had been documenting Dominion activities for over a decade began broadcasting their data to the galaxy. Similar activations were happening across 47 star systems. Asteroids revealed themselves to be monitoring stations. Derelict ships powered up their hidden sensors. Dead moons opened secret observation facilities that had been watching Dominion operations. For decades, on Earth, director Kim Hyo-jin stood before a massive display showing the galaxy. As each hidden station came online, new points of light appeared on the map. Within minutes, the display showed a network of human observation posts spanning every corner of Dominion space. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to her team, "activate all deep space monitoring stations. It's time to show them how long we've been watching." The galactic observation network that humanity had built over 2 centuries was finally revealing itself. For the first time, the true scope of human intelligence gathering became visible. On the Dominion flagship, alerts were screaming from every scanner station. Fleet Commander Vextar watched in growing horror as human observation posts appeared. "Throughout his empire, sir," reported scanner operator Thekmar, "we're detecting human monitoring stations in every system we've ever conquered. They've been hidden for decades." "How many stations?" "Over 3,000 confirmed, sir, and they're all broadcasting data simultaneously." The data being broadcast was devastating. Complete records of Dominion military operations, detailed analysis of command structures, documentation of supply lines, and comprehensive intelligence on every aspect of Dominion governance. Information that had taken the Dominion 2 centuries to accumulate was being shared freely across the galaxy. Strategist John Bo Ram presented her tactical assessment to Earth's military command. The room was filled with officers who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. "Based on 200 years of observation," she began, "we have identified 847 critical vulnerabilities in standard Dominion conquest protocols. Their ships are powerful but predictable. Their tactics are effective but inflexible. Their command structure is centralized and vulnerable to disruption." Admiral Park Chan-woo studied the analysis. "You're saying we can predict their every move?" "Better than that, sir. We can predict their responses to their own predictions. They've used the same tactical doctrine for so long that they've become completely predictable. What about their weapons? Their ships are much more powerful than ours." "Raw power isn't everything, sir. They've never had to adapt their tactics, because they've never faced an enemy that understood their methods. We're not going to fight their ships. We're going to outthink their commanders." These strategy sessions were being broadcast openly across human networks, and the Dominion was monitoring every word. For the first time in their military history, they were facing an enemy that shared their tactical plans publicly because they were confident those tactics would work regardless. Rebellion Coordinator Lim Haina smiled as reports came in from across the galaxy. Suppressed populations on 46 worlds were using human intelligence to launch coordinated uprising attempts. Each rebellion was precisely timed and executed based on detailed analysis of Dominion response patterns. "Status: report from the Centauri Resistance," she announced to her coordination team. "They've successfully disrupted 3 major supply convoys using our analysis of Dominion logistics protocols." Rigel Sector reports successful strikes against communication relays. "They're using our data on Dominion repair timeframes to maximize disruption." Kepler Resistance has liberated 2 orbital facilities. They knew exactly when shift changes occurred because we documented Dominion scheduling patterns for 30 years. Each successful operation proved that human intelligence was accurate and actionable. The resistance movements weren't fighting blindly anymore. They were conducting surgical strikes against known weaknesses, using information that the Dominion never realized anyone possessed. On the Dominion flagship, reports kept arriving from across the Empire. Each one brought news of another coordinated attack, another successful rebellion, another critical system compromised. "Sir," intelligence, Officer Zethkol reported with barely controlled panic, "we're detecting uprising activity on 23 worlds. They all appear to be using identical tactical intelligence to exploit our operational vulnerabilities." "What kind of vulnerabilities?" Vextar demanded. "Everything, sir. They know our patrol schedules, our supply routes, our communication protocols, our emergency response procedures. It's like they have copies of our own operational manuals." "Because they do," Science Officer Corthan added grimly. "The humans have been recording everything for 2 centuries. They probably know our procedures better than we do." The nightmare was becoming clear to Vextar. His perfect conquest machine had been turned into a teaching tool. Every successful Operation had been studied and analyzed until the Dominion's strengths became predictable weaknesses. Sir, Communications Officer Drexthor called urgently, we're receiving a priority transmission from Dominion High Command. The message was from Supreme Commander Korthvex, Vextar's superior. His voice carried barely controlled fury mixed with disbelief. Vextar, explain how a single primitive world has access to classified operational data going back 2 centuries. Our entire empire is in chaos because somehow these humans know every tactical protocol we've ever used. Vextar had no answer. How could he explain that humanity had been following the Dominion around the galaxy for 200 years, secretly documenting every operation like students taking notes in class? Sir, he finally replied, the humans appear to have been conducting long-term intelligence-gathering operations. For how long? 2 centuries, sir. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any shouting. When Korthvex spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. Are you telling me that these primitives have been watching us for 200 years, and we never noticed? Yes, sir. And now they're sharing our operational secrets with every species in the galaxy? Yes, sir. And 46 worlds are using this information to coordinate simultaneous uprisings across our empire? Yes, sir. Another long silence. Vextar, you will immediately withdraw from Sol System and return to headquarters for debriefing. Sir, we haven't attempted conquest yet. We could still... You could still what? Fight an enemy that knows every move you're going to make before you make it? An enemy that has spent 2 centuries studying our weaknesses? An enemy that is currently broadcasting our tactical secrets to every rebel group in the galaxy? Vextar realized the truth. This wasn't a conquest operation anymore. It was a disaster. On Earth, President Lee Da-un received a communication request from the Dominion flagship. She accepted the call with the same calm smile that had become humanity's signature response. Fleet Commander Vextar, she said politely. How can we help you? President Lee. We... Vextar struggled to find words. How long have you been watching us? Since your first expansion beyond your home system, Commander. 203 years, 4 months, and 15 days. Why? Because we knew that someday you would come for us too. We wanted to be ready. Ready. To fight us? Lee's smile grew warmer. Ready to teach you what we learned by watching you for 2 centuries. The irony was complete. The Dominion had arrived to conquer their greatest students, only to discover that the students had become teachers, and class was now in session. President Lee Da-un looked out at the stars from her office in Seoul and made a decision that would change galactic history. It was time for a face-to-face meeting. Open a channel to Fleet Commander Vextar, she instructed her communications. Officer. The alien commander appeared on her screen, looking more confused and frustrated than any conquering fleet leader should. His perfect military bearing had cracked slightly, showing the uncertainty beneath. Fleet Commander, Lee said with her characteristic calm smile, I believe we need to talk. Would you be willing to meet in person? Vextar's mandibles clicked, with surprise. You want to meet in the middle of a conquest operation? Is that what this is? Because from our perspective, this looks more like a learning opportunity. 2 hours later, a neutral shuttle met in the space between Earth's orbital defenses and the massive Dominion fleet. President Lee arrived with a small diplomatic team, including Admiral Park Chan-woo and Dr. Song Ye-jin. Vextar brought his senior officers, all of them armed and expecting some kind of trap. Instead, they found themselves in a comfortable meeting room where humans served refreshments and treated them like visiting dignitaries rather than conquering invaders. You want to know how we've been watching you? Lee began, settling into her chair as if this were a routine diplomatic meeting. The answer is simple. We've been following you. Admiral Park activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Bright lines traced the Dominion's expansion path over 2 centuries, and parallel lines showed humanity's journey. When you conquered the Centauri system 40 years ago, Lee explained, we were there, hidden in the asteroid fields. When you subjugated Vega 30 years ago, we were monitoring from dark side stations. When you crushed the Rigel Federation, we were recording everything from derelict ships positioned throughout the system. Vextar stared at the display. You followed us to every conquest? Every conquest, every battle, every strategic meeting. We've been your shadow for 2 centuries. Dr. Song leaned forward, her expression earnest. Humanity developed interstellar travel 203 years ago, Commander, but instead of expanding randomly like most species, we made a different choice. We followed you. Why? Demanded Vextar's science officer, Corthan. Because you became our teachers. You showed us exactly what not to do, how not to govern, how not to treat other species. Intelligence Chief Moon. Jae-sung joined the conversation via hologram from Earth. Every species makes mistakes when they first venture into space. Most learn from their own errors through trial and catastrophic failure. We decided to learn from someone else's mistakes. Our mistakes? Vextar's voice carried dangerous undertones. 200 years of mistakes, Moon confirmed. Every world you conquered, you made the same errors. You ruled through fear, demanded submission, showed no interest in understanding the species you controlled. You created an empire built on suppression and resentment. Our empire has lasted 2 centuries, Vextar protested. Has it? Lee asked, gently. Right now, 46 worlds are in active rebellion because we shared information about your weaknesses. An empire that can be brought to chaos by simple intelligence sharing isn't as stable as you think. Admiral Park zoomed the display to show current galactic status. Red indicators showed uprising activity across the Dominion Empire, each rebellion precisely timed and coordinated. You see, Commander, we didn't just watch your military operations. We observed your governance methods, your economic policies, your treatment of conquered populations. We documented everything that created resentment, everything that bred resistance, everything that weakened your control. Dr. Song pulled up detailed files. The Centauri resistance never succeeded before because they didn't understand your response patterns. Now they know exactly how you react to different types of rebellion, so they can predict and counter your moves. The Rigel independence movement failed repeatedly because they didn't know your supply chain vulnerabilities. Now they're striking at precisely the right locations to cause maximum disruption. The Vegan Liberation Front couldn't coordinate effectively because they didn't understand your communication protocols. Now they're jamming your signals at exactly the right frequencies and times. Vexitar was beginning to understand the scope of what humanity had done. You turned our own success against us. We turned your methods into teaching tools, Lee corrected. Every successful conquest became a lesson in how oppression creates its own downfall. Every suppressed population became proof that fear-based rule is ultimately unsustainable. But why? Corthan asked. Why spend 2 centuries studying us? Why not build your own empire? The question hung in the air for a moment before Lee answered with a sad smile. Because we watched you conquer 46 civilizations, Commander. We saw the suffering you caused, the cultures you destroyed, the potential you wasted. We realized that the galaxy didn't need another empire. It needed someone to teach empires why they fail. Intelligence Officer Zethkol spoke up. You're saying, you've been preparing for this moment for 2 centuries? Not this moment, specifically. Admiral Park replied. We knew that eventually you would come for us. Every expanding empire eventually reaches every populated system. We just made sure that when you arrived, you would find a galaxy that was ready for you. The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. You prepared the entire galaxy for our arrival? We shared information, provided analysis, offered perspective. We helped suppressed populations understand their oppressors' weaknesses. What they chose to do with that information was up to them. Dr. Song added, we also offered something you never did, Commander. We offered hope. For 2 centuries, conquered species have lived under Dominion rule, believing resistance was hopeless. Now they know it isn't. You've destroyed our empire, Vextar said quietly. Your empire destroyed itself, Lee replied. We just helped people understand how. An empire built on fear and suppression contains the seeds of its own destruction. We simply provided the knowledge to help those seeds grow. Moon Jae-sung's hologram leaned forward. The irony, Commander, is that you created the instrument of your own downfall. Every conquest operation we observed taught us more about your weaknesses. Every successful suppression showed us how oppression breeds resistance. You were the perfect negative example. For 200 years, Admiral Park continued, you demonstrated exactly how not to build a sustainable galactic civilization. You showed us that conquest creates enemies, that fear breeds rebellion, That suppression eventually leads to uprising. And now? Vexatar asked. President Lee stood up, her expression shifting from diplomatic courtesy to something deeper and more determined. Now, Commander, the students become the teachers, and the first lesson is about to begin. The meeting room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Outside the windows, the massive Dominion fleet hung in space, suddenly seeming less like an unstoppable force and more like an outdated relic of a failed approach to galactic governance. The greatest military machine in galactic history had arrived to conquer Earth, only to discover that Earth had spent 2 centuries preparing not to defeat them, but to replace them. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of Orbital Station Harmony, watching history unfold across his displays. Across 47 star systems, the carefully coordinated liberation was beginning exactly as humanity had planned for 2 centuries. "Give the signal," he said quietly. The message went out simultaneously to every human observation post, every resistance cell, every suppressed population that had received humanity's intelligence files. It was simple. Class is now in session. On the former Centauri homeworld, Resistance leader Keth Val led his forces in a coordinated strike against Dominion supply depots. For the first time in 40 years of occupation, they knew exactly where to hit and when. Human intelligence had mapped every Dominion facility, documented every patrol route, and analyzed every weakness. "Strike teams Alpha through Delta, move to primary targets," Keth Val ordered. "Remember, the humans showed us that Dominion response. Time to supply depot attacks is exactly 47 minutes. We have 45 minutes to complete our objectives and withdraw." The attacks proceeded like clockwork. 40 years of failed rebellion had taught the Centaurians courage. 2 centuries of human observation had given them knowledge. Combined, they were unstoppable. Commander Yu Minji led a fleet of human ships toward the Rigel system, but not to attack. Her vessels were loaded with medical supplies, engineering equipment, and humanitarian aid. While resistance fighters struck military targets, humans were evacuating civilians from combat zones. "Remember," she broadcast to her fleet, "we're not here to conquer or destroy. We're here to help people reclaim their freedom safely." The human approach was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They provided intelligence and support, but let each species fight their own liberation battles. They offered aid and assistance, but never demanded control or submission in return. On Earth, President Lee Dae-yoon addressed the world from the same office where she had calmly received news of the Dominion's arrival. "Citizens of Earth," she began. "Today marks the end of humanity's longest educational program. For 2 centuries, we have watched and learned from the Dominion's expansion across our galaxy. Today, we begin sharing what we learned." The broadcast was transmitted across the galaxy, reaching every species that had lived under Dominion rule. To all peoples of the galaxy, Earth offers alliance, not conquest; trade agreements, not tribute; cooperation, not submission. We have learned from watching how empires fail, and we choose a different path. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the galaxy as liberated worlds requested diplomatic contact with Earth. Not to surrender or submit, but to explore partnership and mutual cooperation. Diplomat Seo Hyun-woo found himself managing first contact protocols, with 46 different species simultaneously. Each conversation followed the same pattern: amazement at humanity's approach, gratitude for the intelligence that enabled their liberation, and curiosity about how galactic civilization might work without conquest and domination. "Ambassador," asked the Rigel representative, "your species spent 2 centuries preparing to help us free ourselves. Why?" "Because we learned that freedom shared is freedom multiplied," SEO replied. "An empire built on conquest creates enemies. A civilization built on cooperation creates allies." On the Dominion flagship, Fleet Commander Vex Tar watched his empire crumble with mathematical precision. Every rebellion proceeded exactly as human intelligence had predicted. Every Dominion response fell into patterns that had been anticipated and countered. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Zeth Cole, "we're receiving surrender requests from our garrison commanders on 17 worlds. They're requesting permission to withdraw rather than face continued resistance. Surrender requests? Vextar had never heard those words applied to Dominion forces. The resistance movements know our tactical responses better than we do, sir. Our forces are being outmaneuvered at every turn. Science Officer Corthan looked up from his analysis station. Sir, I've been studying the human intelligence files they shared with us. Their tactical analysis of our operations is more detailed than our own after-action reports. How is that possible? Because they observed our operations objectively, sir. We reported what we wanted to hear. They recorded what actually happened. The truth was devastating. The Dominion had become so confident in their own superiority that they had stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped growing. They had become predictable, and predictable enemies were defeated enemies. Captain Cho Se-jin reported from across the galaxy as human humanitarian fleets completed their missions. Liberation status update, she announced to Earth Command. Centauri. Civilian evacuation complete, 0 casualties, Rigel system liberation proceeding ahead of schedule. Vega Independence Declaration has been formally recognized by 17 neighboring systems. What about Dominion resistance? Asked Admiral Tejo. Minimal, sir. Most Dominion commanders are withdrawing rather than fighting unwinnable battles. It appears they're finally learning to adapt. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. Dominion forces, faced with enemies who knew their every move, chose strategic withdrawal over hopeless combat. The empire that had ruled through overwhelming force discovered that force was useless against opponents who understood it completely. On Earth, Dr. Choi Min-seok published his final research paper, The End of the Conquest Era, Lessons Learned from 200 Years of Observation. The paper outlined humanity's conclusions about galactic civilization. Conquest created instability. Suppression bred resistance. Fear-based rule was ultimately unsustainable. The only stable foundation for galactic civilization was voluntary cooperation between free species. The Dominion's greatest contribution to galactic history, he wrote, was demonstrating why empires fail. Their expansion created the perfect laboratory for studying the weaknesses of conquest-based civilization. Humanity's contribution is sharing those lessons with everyone. Fleet Commander Vextar made his final report to Dominion High Command. His perfect conquest fleet hung powerless in space, not because they had been defeated in battle, but because they had been made irrelevant by superior knowledge. Supreme Commander, he reported, Operation 47 has failed. The humans were prepared for our arrival. More than prepared. They had spent 2 centuries studying our methods and sharing that knowledge with our subjects. What is the status of our empire? Supreme Commander Korthvex asked. In collapse, sir. Coordinated uprisings have succeeded on 43 worlds. Our remaining garrisons are requesting withdrawal permissions. The humans are offering humanitarian aid to populations we can no longer control. And their demands for our surrender? None, sir. They're not demanding anything. They're offering partnership. The final irony was complete. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, not to destroy the Dominion, but to offer them a chance to learn better ways of existing in the galaxy. President Lee made one final broadcast to Fleet Commander Vexitar. Commander, you asked earlier why we spent 2 centuries watching you. The answer is simple. We were waiting for the moment when we could help you understand what we learned. And what did you learn? Vextar asked. That the galaxy is large enough for everyone, wise enough to share knowledge, and strong enough to choose cooperation over conquest. You taught us that by showing us what happened when civilizations chose the opposite. The galactic fleet that had arrived expecting easy conquest found itself surrounded not by weapons, but by grateful delegations. From 47 liberated worlds, the students had become teachers, the oppressed had become free, and the galaxy had learned its most important lesson. Earth, still blue and peaceful, took its place not as another galactic empire, but as the galaxy's conscience. The age of conquest was over. The age of wisdom had begun, and humanity finally stopped smiling because their work was just beginning.